Matron rose from the lunch table and made her way towards the serving hatch.
Oh, Matron, are there any second helpings, please?
Jennings asked eagerly as she approached.
I don't know yet, she told him. I shall have to see whether the masters would like some more first.
Jennings turned to his neighbour with a shrug.
Oh, it's always the same. It's always the masters who get the decent helpings.
Along both sides of the table, the boys watched with growing concern as one master after another smilingly accepted a second portion of prunes and custard.
Oh, look at old Wilkie shoveling them down,
Temple said with feeling.
Anyone would think he'd had nothing to eat since the Wars of the Roses. I bet you £1,000,000 there won't be any left when it comes to our turn.
His forecast was not entirely correct. Nobody was actually refused a second helping, though by the time the third form table was served, the size of the portions was diminishing in an alarming fashion. Jennings, who was the last to be served, was given the smallest helping of all.
2 prunes. 2 measly prunes. They're not even decent-sized ones. Look at that tiddly little shriveled-up specimen. It's so small you can only see it in a strong light. Like to borrow my pocket telescope, Jennings?
Venables inquired.
Yes, I jolly well would. I don't see why I should ruin my eyesight looking for a prune that's barely visible to the naked eye.
Venables took the telescope from his pocket and willing hands passed it down the table. A ripple of amusement followed as Jennings put the instrument to his eye and focused it upon his plate.
I'm a big prune hunter, searching the African jungle for a rare specimen known as the lesser shriveled prune. I focus your telescope on your plate like so. Yes, I think I can see it. Stand back, everybody. I am now going into the attack, armed only with a bent-pronged school fork.
The bell at the master's table rang out suddenly.
Jennings!
There was no doubt from the tone of his voice that the headmaster was extremely annoyed.
What are you doing with the telescope at the luncheon table?
I was just looking at my prune through it, sir.
Why? What could he say? It was impossible to explain out loud to a hushed room a joke that was no longer funny.
I don't know, sir.
If that ill-mannered exhibition was your idea of being funny, Jennings, it was a jest in extremely bad taste, said the headmaster. Leave the room at once. Jennings had not been waiting long outside in the corridor when Matron emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray stacked with plates and steaming dishes. 2 chartered accountants had arrived that morning to audit the school accounts, and the headmaster had arranged for them to have their lunch in the staff common room.
That tray looks awfully heavy, Matron, Jennings observed. Would you like me to carry it up to the sick room for you?
No, thank you. I can manage. In any case, it's not going to the sick room. These are just some extra lunches I'm taking along to the master's common room.
Extra lunches? Extra lunches for the master's common room? Jennings gaped after her as the significance of her remark sank into his mind. Knowing nothing of the hungry accountants awaiting their midday repast, he could think of only one explanation to fit the facts. It was a very disturbing thought. Very disturbing indeed. A thunderous rumbling from behind the dining hall door announced that 78 boys were rising to their feet, and a few moments later, Derbyshire, Venables and Temple appeared at the head of the throng which came surging out into the corridor.
Oh, there you are, Jen. Jolly swizzle getting sent out like that,
Derbyshire began. He fumbled in his pocket and produced an off-white handkerchief screwed up into a ball.
Here you are. Look, I've got those 2 prunes you didn't finish if you still want them. Thanks, Darby, but I couldn't eat them now. They turned to ashes in my mouth. They're practically ashes already, especially the little shriveled one,
Derbyshire observed as he unwrapped the off-white handkerchief.
If you ask me, school cooking is the last...
He broke off at the sight of his friend's expression.
What's up, Jen? Listen, Darby, and you other chaps, I've just made an important discovery.
Jennings' tone was grave.
There's something going on in this school that you don't know about. The masters are secret eaters.
Secret eaters? What on earth are you waffling about? Venables demanded.
Well, Mr. Carter and Mr. Wilkins and the head and all of them have just had lunch with us, haven't they? I should say so. They had first go at the second helpings, too. Ah, yes. But do you know what they're going to do now? They're going to have another meal in the master's common room right away. Jolly well not fair. Are you sure, Jen?
Derbyshire asked in tones of horrified disbelief.
Of course I'm sure I can prove it. Matron's just gone staggering along there with a massive great tray piled to the ceiling with boiled beef and prunes and custard and things. And what's more, she actually admitted where she was taking it.
By now, Jennings was aflame with righteous indignation.
Just think of it. All through lunch, the masters sit there smiling to themselves because they know there's another whacking great meal waiting for them. And for all we know, they do it after the other meals as well,
Derbyshire said as fresh possibilities of the scheme occurred to him.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 2 teas and 2 suppers. 8 meals a day. 54 meals a week. Wow!
7 eighths of 56,
Corrected Venables, whose mathematics was of a slightly higher standard.
That's even worse then,
Exclaimed Derbyshire.
What couldn't I do with 56 meals a week?
We've only got Jennings' word for it.
The only way we could prove it would be to march slap bang into the staff room after a meal and catch 'em red-handed.
Jennings shook his head.
We couldn't do that. We'd have to knock first and wait for an answer.
In his mind's eye, he tried to picture the scene of chaos and confusion in the staff room that would follow an unexpected rapping on the door. Plates would be hurriedly concealed behind the bookcase, cutlery dropped into the wastepaper basket, and the window flung open to dispel the appetizing aroma. Then, and only then, would the door be opened a few cautious inches by some master swallowing the last remnant of food and furtively wiping his fingers on his handkerchief. By this time, the last stragglers were leaving the dining hall, and at the tail of the procession came Mr. Wilkins. "Come along now, don't block up the corridor," he boomed in his deep, loud hailer of a voice. "I can't think why you boys will hang about outside the dining hall after lunch is over. Anyone would think you were hoping for another meal." Jennings and Derbyshire exchanged glances. Here surely was further proof that furtive feasting was the subject uppermost in Mr. Wilkins' mind. Jennings made no comment as he led the way upstairs to the library, but Derbyshire, following at his heels, could read his friend's mind as clearly as though he were a character in a cartoon advertisement, with a balloon of thought floating in space above his head. "Ha-ha," read the thought balloon in bold black type. "Little does Sir know that his crafty secret has been discovered."
I've had a brainwave about that play we were going to write for the school concert,
Derbyshire remarked to Jennings during breakfast one morning.
What I thought was, if we could persuade Mr. Carter to lend us the starting pistol he uses on sports day, we could do a play about a chap who gets shot or something.
Jennings laid down his spoon and stared at the budding playwright in admiration. Real revolver shots, gun battles, ear-splitting detonations, the stage strewn with corpses. Here was a play after his own heart.
You've got something there, Darby, he agreed. Make up the story together, shall we? It could be about, well, say for instance an old miser with a secret hoard of gold, and there could be a bunch of crooks after it, and someone else could be the detective and come on with the starting pistol and wipe them all out.
The two playwrights started work in a white heat of enthusiasm immediately after breakfast. 2 days later, after several false starts, the dramatic masterpiece was finished. There was no doubt in the author's minds that The Miser's Secret, a play in 6 scenes, was a work of outstanding merit. Apart from the misfortunes of such characters as the miser, murdered in scene 1, and the villain, brought to justice in scene 6, most of the action concerned a trigger-happy, sharp-shooting detective, J.C.T. Jennings, and his heavily moustached assistant, C.E.J. Derbyshire.
It all depends now on whether Mr. Carter will let us have the starting pistol,
Derbyshire said as the two authors discussed the play on the evening scheduled for the first rehearsal.
I don't see why he shouldn't. After all, we're only going to fire blanks, Jennings answered. I'll go and see him now if you like and ask him. Righto then. Bring it along to the gym, if poss. I'll get the cast together and start work.
The first rehearsal of The Miser's Secret did not run as smoothly as the producer had hoped.
We'll start off by reading scene 1,
Derbyshire announced when the cast had assembled.
You're the villain with the revolver, Temple, and Venables is the old miser who gets shot.
He attached the false moustache to the miser's upper lip with stamp hinges, so that it could be removed quickly and handed on to some other character at a later stage of the drama. Then he produced a broken toy pistol and a homemade cardboard dagger from his pocket and thrust them into Temple's hands. The villain of the piece examined his weapons with a critical eye.
This bastard old pistol's no good, it doesn't even make a noise,
he protested, jerking the trigger to and fro in soundless demonstration.
Ah, but it's only to practice with for now, Derbyshire assured him. Jennings has gone to borrow Mr. Carter's starting pistol. It'll make a supersonic bang when it goes off, and then you'll...
He swiveled round excitedly as his fellow author hurried in through the gymnasium door carrying a large brown paper bag.
Here he comes now. Jolly good. Have you got the pistol, Jen?
Jennings shook his head.
Mr. Carter won't let us have it. Oh, fishhooks. Why ever not? He didn't seem to think much of our play when I told him what it was about. He even had the nerve to say we ought to try and find a better one. Shakespeare or someone like that.
Derbyshire tutted in disapproval. In his own mind, he doubted whether there was a better play than The Miser's Secret, but he was too modest to say so out loud.
But this is hopeless, he protested. How are we going to do the shooting if we haven't got a gun?
Jennings waved the paper bag in the air.
Oh, it's all right. I've had a brainwave about that, he said. I'll sit behind the screen at the back of the stage and burst the bag when the gun's supposed to go off. The audience will never guess if we time it properly.
Good scheme, Derbyshire approved. He bustled about importantly, handing round dog-eared sheets of writing paper to the actors in the opening scenes.
Here are your parts, you chaps. Let's get cracking.
Temple mounted the rostrum. In a throaty, unnatural voice, he read aloud,
Creeping on stealthily, I wonder if I shall meet that old miser, Mr. Brown, today.
No, you clodpole,
corrected Derbyshire from the far end of the gymnasium.
You don't say creeping on stealthily. That's what you have to do. And that's your cue to come on, Venables. You march in, smelling of mothballs, and look as though you've just hidden your fortune under the floorboards. Okay.
Venables shambled onto the stage as Temple proceeded with his next line.
Aha! Here he is. I will speak to him.
Loudly he called,
Him, him! Him, him!
Venables raised his eyes from the ink-smeared pages in his hand.
If you're talking to me, you've got the name wrong, he pointed out. I'm not Hem. Darby says my name was Mr. Brown, the old miser. I'm only reading what it says here, replied Temple stolidly. Perhaps Hem is your nickname or something. Mr. Hem Brown.
The producer flapped his fingers in exasperation.
No, you bazookas. Hem isn't his name, it's just a throat-clearing noise. You want to attract his attention, Temple, so you cough. Hem.
But I haven't got a cough, the villain argued. Derbyshire clasped his brow in despair.
Go on to your next speech, he ordered.
Righto, said Temple.
Him! Good morning, Mr. Brown. Nice day, is it not?
There followed a long pause while Venables thumbed his way through 2 pages of manuscript trying to find the place. At last he was ready.
Ha! I recognize you, he began woodenly. I presume you are my deadly enemy, Mr. Percy Robinson, who is hoping to steal the secret hoard of banknotes which I have just hidden under the floorboards at 231 High Street. Are you not?
Temple looked up from his script.
Oh, let's get on to the shooting. There's too much hemming and ah-hahing in this play for my liking.
In his stage voice, he proceeded,
Aha! So we meet at last, Mr. Brown. Take heed, for your days are numbered, and you are about to breathe your last.
Breathe my last what?
Venables turned to the producer for enlightenment.
Never mind what, just breathe it, retorted Derbyshire irritably. We'll never get through the first scene if you keep stopping to ask silly questions.
Breathe your last and breathe it quickly.
Came in villainous tones from Temple as he pointed the toy revolver at the miser's heart.
For if you do not, I propose to shoot you.
Help,
the miser mumbled.
Do not shoot, Mr. Robinson. Have mercy, Percy.
Too late. My finger is on the trigger.
Jennings, waiting behind the screen, heard this cue and acted upon it. Filling his lungs with air, he began blowing up the paper bag with which to imitate the sound of the pistol shot. It was a large bag, and the aerating process was slow.
My finger is on the trigger. My finger is on the trigger.
Temple paused expectantly, awaiting the shot. At last, in desperation, he cried,
For heaven's sake, Jennings, hurry up and burst that bag. I can't keep my finger on the trigger all night. Nearly ready,
replied Jennings, breaking off from his task and letting most of the compressed air escape from its container.
These bags take a lot of breath, I'll have you know.
Time passed, but no explosion occurred.
My finger is on the trigger.
Temple repeated for the 4th time, fidgeting with impatience. Oh, it was hopeless waiting for Jennings, he decided. He must act on his own initiative. What should he do? The answer came to him in a flash. He dropped the pistol, seized the cardboard dagger from his pocket, and leapt forward with arm upraised to strike. With a dramatic gesture, he plunged the weapon into his victim's ribs. And as he did so, a thunderous report rang out from behind the screen. Venables sank to his knees with a gasp of puzzled surprise.
Ah, false villain, you have stabbed me. No, I mean you have shot me. No, fishhooks. This is feeble, he complained with his dying breath. I don't even know how I've been murdered.